Welcome. I am Kemi Oshukoya, editor-in-chief of the Africa Bazaar magazine and host and creator of this show, Portfolio Africa. As you can tell by the name, the show is about Africa's affairs. Today is Monday, January 18, 2021. This morning, the International Monetary Fund Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva and the IMFC new chairwoman Magdalena Andersson, the finance minister of Sweden, held a virtual joint press conference to discuss what's ahead for the multilateral finance institution in 2021 as it continued to provide financial and technical support to countries to help them weather the downturn from the COVID-19 pandemic. During the meeting, I asked for updates on the fund's COVID-19 economic recovery for Africa and whether it is considering granting debt relief to Sudan under the HIPC program. Listen to what they have to say.
Now we have a question from the Africa Bazaar magazine.
I was wondering, given what has been going on for the past more than 10 months since the COVID-19 pandemic started, I was wondering whether, regarding Africa, if you plan to make any changes to the plan that you have in place, whether to update some of the program or just keep any of the program that you have. My other question is regarding Sudan. Secretary Mnuchin from the U.S. was recently in Sudan, and he said the U.S. planned to work with the country and with the World Bank to provide debt relief. And I was wondering if you could talk about that, whether that's something that you plan to be involved in.
Magdalena, would you like to go first?
No, Kristalina, you go first.
Others, and then I'll follow.
No, you go first, Kristalina. I can follow them.
Okay. So Africa, very important that we stand by. As the minister said, we face the risk of losing that has been made, impressive progress that has been made in development over the last decades, unless we act decisively. Africa in 2020 shrunk for the first time since majority of African countries obtained their independence. And it is very important that we are concerned about a growth impetus in Africa. For 2021, very project the world economy to grow over 5% and the African economies to grow 3%. Clearly, this is not enough. Africa needs to grow 6, 7, 8, 9, 10%. It has wonderful opportunities to grow. But right now, it is very restricted in terms of access to financing, and many countries are affected tremendously, not by the fact mortality and morbidity in a youthful continent has been somewhat less, although the trend recently in a number of countries goes in the wrong direction. Stop. But the economic devastation from COVID has been very significant in countries that are either tourism dependent or commodity exports dependent. We have seen a number of months of very, very harsh conditions. For this reason, what we did in 2020 was to very massively lean forward with emergency financing, making sure that countries do have the capacity to their economy and, more importantly, their most vulnerable people. In 2021, I don't anticipate for us to continue with emergency financing unless there are shocks that are justified. What we want is to work with countries on helping them have fiscal to address the scarcity crisis, and most importantly, to take on the opportunity for economic transformation, accelerating digital and accelerating climate resilience and in some countries low carbon investments that they can make with public support, but also make sure that this public support is oriented towards addressing issues of governance, so have attractiveness for private sector domestically and also foreign direct investments to flow into Africa. And again, I want to stress this is a continent of opportunities, and it is important that these opportunities are not forgone because of lack of decisive domestic and international action. Sudan, we actually just had a board discussion at the fund on Sudan. We have a staff monitoring program. We are working very intensively with Sudan to build the preconditions for debt relief so Sudan can become eligible for HIPC. It is not an easy case. This is the longest being in arrears country. Therefore, it not to be trivial, but I was very encouraged by the strong support from the membership. We are going to have sometime in March an assessment of how the staff monitoring program is advancing, and we do hope as swiftly as possible to present to the membership a strong case on Sudan for HIPC, so the country can reintegrate with the international community. We are encouraged by the determination of the Sudanese authorities. As you know, this is an incredible story, and the women said enough is enough to the old regime, and we want to be there for the whole country. I expect that in March we will have to tell you more about Sudan and the prospects of area clearance and debt relief for the country. And I want to recognize that a number of countries, US, UK, have indicated that once progress is made, they will indeed also step up grant support for Sudan.
Thank you. If I could just quickly ask
Thank you, Kristalina, just to say something about Africa. I mean, as I said in my introduction, the development we've seen in Africa when it comes to economic development and poverty reduction in the last decades has been fantastic. So many families have been lifted out of poverty, and the halt that we have seen and the setback we've seen during this crisis is truly worrying. And therefore, I see that support from IMF, World Bank, and other international institutions will be very important in the coming years to make sure and to do what we can help to put Africa back on track in economic development. And this, together with internal resource mobilization and advice and studies that can be done from the IMF, will, I hope, be important pillars when Africa can go back to a trajectory of high economic growth and poverty reduction. And just as Kristalina said, there is so much potential in Africa, not the least the demography in Africa looks very different to that in other parts of the world, which also is something that can help in enduring economic growth in the years to come.
Okay, the press conference
I'm
is...
sorry, can I just add, guys, I want what the Minister Andersson said about domestic mobilization. You would see in our programs as we go forward that we will be assigning a high priority of countries having tax systems that are effectively operating to lift up domestic resources. We cannot have situations in which tax to GDP is so meager that it is hard for the country to invest in people and in infrastructure for growth. When it is below 15% tax to GDP, that is holding countries. So I wanted this message on domestic resource mobilization, the right tax policies and ability to collect taxes for the good of people, that this is being recognized.
Okay.